Well, uh, started. Well,
Looks
good
like
afternoon. Yep. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for another, I was going to say episode, but that would sound a bit too Hollywood, won't it? Of the recorded one-to-ones with the Chief Constable. We do this every 6 weeks, but this is in addition to the almost daily and weekly conversations that the Chief and I have about policing in the county. So I don't want anyone to think that it's the only time we talk, because I think Trevor gets plenty contact from me, probably more than he would like sometimes. But no, we do have a lot of exchanges, and of course, some of you would appreciate. Some of these are not things that we can put in the public domain. I know that some people would like to know about all the issues that are raised, but just due to the sensitivity of some of these issues, not all of them can be put in the public domain. But at least these one-to-ones, which are being recorded, are mostly questions from members of the public, things that you've raised with me on social media, or you've sent via email to me, that I'm raising with the Chief Constable on your behalf, and hopefully you'll be able to get some of the responses here today as well. Uh, Trevor, for those who don't know who you are, I mean, everyone should know you by now. Would you want to just start off by introducing yourself, please?
yeah, no, well, I'm clearly not as famous as you, Commissioner. So yeah. Hi everybody. My name's Trevor Rodenhurst, Chief Constable of Bedfordshire Police.
Okay, we'll go straight ahead. The first question that I've got is from a chap called Keith Redmond Henry, aka Lenny. He thinks you might know him. He used to be an officer with Bedfordshire Police some years ago, and he's from Amt Hill. And his question is around the relationship between Bedfordshire Police and the University of Bedfordshire. As you know, they do have a degree program over there at the university. And the concern is that, and I've actually saw this when I was at a university a couple of weeks ago, that you've got people who are special constables in Bedfordshire who finished a policing degree at the university, and they end up going to join Thames Valley Police or Hertfordshire Police. And his question was, why isn't Bedfordshire Police doing more to get these students who are serving in Bedfordshire or who live in Bedfordshire to join Bedfordshire Police?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. Firstly, just to reassure him, we do have a good liaison with Bedford University, and in fact, I think, Commissioner, you and I were both at a graduation the other day,
Yes.
where lecturers from the university criminology course attended because one of their students was joining us as a regular. So, but interestingly, at that meeting, we discussed additional things that we might do to help them with the course, which obviously we've got our people with students from the university, that always creates interest in our force. In terms of the different programs that we do with universities, so just to explain, so our, if you like, our contract and our deal on entry pathways is with Anglia Ruskin University. That's who we effectively do our formal programs with, and we don't do a pre-join scheme as some forces, but what we do is we have a police constable degree apprenticeship, so PCDA as it's known of, and that means that if you join our force on that program, then you spend some time with Anglia Ruskin University, and you end up on a 3-year apprenticeship where at the end of it, not only are you paid all the way through as a police officer, and have become a police constable, you end up with a degree in policing. We also do the degree holder entry program, where someone with a degree from any university joining our force, at the end of it, will also get a diploma in policing as part of their entry pathway. And then clearly we should do the traditional route into policing, where you don't need a degree, you don't have to get one. We're going to continue doing that, and we have a version of that where you can come in as an accelerated detective. The current additional bit to that we're looking at is a degree holder entry program as a detective. And in fact, degree holders can do our current one, but there is one which will be formally where you get that diploma as well. So we do, those are our key pathways that we do. And as I say, we're going to, further our links with the university through a conversation that you were witness me having with the university to just ensure that we can fly the flag of Bedfordshire and our local university to encourage people to come here.
Okay.
But we are seeing people join us as well. But I do recognise that some people have come to us as specials because we were taking on specials at the time, but they may live nearer to another force that they've then chosen to join.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, it's good that you're still looking at this. And because for me, it just seemed like if people are already serving locally and they are here, even though I know that we've got the arrangement with Anglia Ruskin, obviously these students, they would have paid for their own degree and got it off their own back. And they want to join the police force. Are they able to join Bedfordshire Police? Of course, they do. We saw one of them. Do they start all over again, or?
No, so they've got a degree. They come in on that 2-year degree
entry
program,
okay.
And they get an additional
Right.
diploma at the end of it in policing, which is a really good thing to get.
Okay, all right.
If they want to do that program, or they can
Right.
still do the traditional route.
And did you say that we've got a liaison officer that works directly with University of Bedfordshire?
Not a liaison officer, but we've got a close liaison between our workforce development team and the university, as we have with a number of other educational establishments across the county. So, for example, we do lots of Luton Sixth Form College.
Yes, yeah. I mean, if there was going to be any advice you want to give to some of these academic institutions who want to be a pipeline for Bedfordshire Police, what would you encourage them to do?
Contact us, contact our workforce development team, and if you're not sure who to contact my office. We'll put you in the right in the right place. And essentially, if a educational establishment in Bedfordshire is doing a relevant course where we think that we've got people on it and policing becomes attractive to them, we'll always try and support that course, as we've done in other.
I mean, even if they've got students who want to become police officers, at 18, and they don't really know where to go, so it will be the workforce development team that they will need to contact.
Yeah, but actually, if you go on our website, it's really geared up towards people who want to join policing. So join. There's a space on the landing zone for joining Bedfordshire Police, and don't worry about the different routes. Have a conversation with our recruitment team, the Bedfordshire recruitment team, and we will explain the opportunities that are open to people.
Yeah. The next question is one that you and we've had several conversations about. It's regarding this issue, which I'm hearing more and more people raise with me around the nuisance use, or almost bordering on criminal use of, and I'm sure you're going to correct me about that if it's not criminal by law, use of this motorbikes. I was having a conversation with a head teacher of an upper school just this morning about his concerns on this issue. Leighton Buzzard was raised specifically. You might also, obviously, you noted the message I sent to you from a police officer from the Met who lives in Leighton Buzzard, who has also reported this issue, and I sent some of the pictures as well. I think there is, for the first time in 2 years, maybe you've had this longer, obviously you've been in this environment longer than I've been, 2 years that I've been in the role as commissioner, this is the most persistent and sustained period of reports to me anyway, complaints rather, of these motorbikes, usually kids or young people on these bikes, no helmet, weaving in and out of traffic, doing wheelies. It could be electric scooters, it could be motorbikes, it could be electric motorbikes. And I understand that there are different rules or legislation that's around all of this, which doesn't help, and that's more of a parliamentary thing. But in the meantime, my concern, Trevor, if I'm being honest with you, is that I don't want the public to believe that our streets are a free-for-all for the nuisance use of these vehicles. And I just wonder if there are any plans to deal with this, even if it is to send a very, very strong message that Bedfordshire is not going to be tolerating this kind of behavior on our streets. We see far too many, or one too many deaths involving these kind of powered vehicles. And I think residents will really be reassured by some words from you on what you're planning to do about this, or what your thoughts are about them.
Okay, we probably could have the whole meeting on this, but I'll maybe, if I answer that question in as three parts.
Mhm.
There's the bikes themselves, and as you say, there's different rules in the law currently, and I'll just maybe touch on that. There is the legislation, and I don't think it needs updating, and there's probably an ask of you, Commissioner, which I'll perhaps spell out. And then you specifically mentioned, if you like, complaints from the public, a number of which have come from Leighton Buzzard, and then there's what we're doing about that problem that appears to be rising in Leighton Buzzard, and I'll perhaps come to that at the end. So you're right. There's essentially three types of bikes as I see them. So you've got e-scooters. So they're completely propelled by an electric battery, and at the moment the law doesn't cater for e-scooters. So they shouldn't be. They can only be used on a private land lawfully, rather than public. But we see loads of them about, don't we? Loads.
Yes.
Not just in this county, but all over in any town. And I think there is an issue there with the law needing updating in response of how people can use them legally. Because yes, I would agree, we're having some challenges with them being used in relating to issues of antisocial behaviour, sometimes for crime, but there's also what I would describe as individuals who are law-abiding individuals who've acquired one of these, who aren't fully aware of the law, and are actually perhaps are using that because of their commute, their trip to school, or the train station where they're cost of living, they don't want to pay parking, and with a green agenda as well. So I personally think there is a big gap in the law, because what I want to do is distinguish, and have an engaging process with the public over this, because I'm sure you wouldn't want, Commissioner, that the first time a young person engages with the police is when they take away their electric scooter that they might have got for their birthday that week. So we have an approach around, in general terms, and I'll come back to specific ASB sort of issues separately, of a kind of in a similar way to we did with COVID, where we engage with the public, we explain, and we encourage them to use them lawfully, and if we have to, we enforce, and that means we will take those scooters away from people. And I know we're doing that, because if I go down to the storeroom, I could take you there. I could tell you it's full of seized scooters.
I see them myself.
Yeah.
I see them in the store. Yes,
but I do think actually there needs to be a change in the Road Traffic Act to encompass this. And I know the national lead has this on the agenda, but this requires politicians' time and parliamentary time to deal with that. So I guess that's my ask. In terms of, there is also electric motorbikes. Electric motorbikes, I think, are a separate category in that they're a motorbike. You can ride one of those, and all of the laws that apply to a normal petrol-powered motorbike are exactly the same. So license, crash helmet, insurance, all of those things. So you're either using one of those in accordance with the law, or if you're not and you're riding it, then there's no difference in riding a petrol motorbike in contravention of the law, and we will treat two things exactly the same. The one in the middle, and the one that's come to note more recently because of tragedy, is the e-bikes. So an e-bike is actually lawful, because actually it's a bike with pedals, but it's got a battery on it that kind of assists the rider. Some of them quite powerful, and some of them have been adapted, and that's where I think we're just updating we've got a policy in how we deal with these, but it's very much in terms of the e-scooters, we have a policy. We're just factoring in the bikes, particularly if they may have been adapted in some way that might make it different to what it says, other than being an e-bike. But an e-bike, you can ride that because it's classed as a pedal cycle. So again, the public need to know the distinction between the three, bikes that we're talking about. However, antisocial behaviour is a control strategy priority for the force, and if it manifests itself in a way that any of the, any kind of bike, motorbike or e-scooter or even electric bikes being kind of used as a way of, and it manifests itself in real significant antisocial behaviour, then we will tackle that with an operation.
Yeah.
So that takes me into what I've heard described in Leighton Buzzard. So there's a few things we are looking to step up. Well, we are stepping up the policing response over there. I won't go into the detail of what that looks like here, but what I say is we've got our own Operation Meteor that you're familiar with, and that involves our own motorcycle riders. We also have our Joint Protective Services, which got our roads policing resources, and our community team. And there's going to be a combination of those resources, which we look to deploy in response to some of those issues that you've raised with me. And, I think the public in Leighton Buzzard will notice some of the visibility that will come as a result of that, and some of
what I would say, just to be clear, is not just Leighton Buzzard. I mean, I've had people from Stopsley, Crawley Green, Dunstable, Houghton Regis, so downside mainly in Dunstable, Houghton Regis as well, Biggleswade, Potton, Bingham, Silso. This is literally all over. And I think while I understand the difference in legislation that cover each of those different vehicles, the concern is that, why is it that these kids can, I shouldn't just say kids, whoever's in these equipment, these road vehicles, should be able to ride around with no helmet, with doing wheelies in between vehicles. Of course, some people are alleging that these have been used in committing crime as well, which we both know has happened here in Bedfordshire or is happening. I think you mentioned one to me a couple of weeks ago. And I think people just want to see a little bit more of a robust action on these nuisance vehicle, whether being legally used or otherwise. But the way they're being used is also the problem.
Yeah. So Operation Meteor is not an operation for Leighton Buzzard. It's one for the county. So firstly, we are focusing those efforts on the county, but there is going to be a combined effort in Leighton Buzzard, because actually we've had a tragic death there recently. We've had a lot of concern from residents, and there is a bit of there is a focus over there. We're updating the guidance to all of our officers on these issues, and as I say, we will take that approach. It will be one of, it won't be a blanket approach to all use of these bikes. There will be that kind of incremental approach I described to you earlier. But where there is clear, blatant breaking of the law in a criminal way, then if our officers identify that, then they will deal with it.
Okay.
What we're doing is diverting loads of resources away from loads of other things to do this.
No, I understand. But if the case is that, let's say you're having issues of burglary or theft, but those vehicles are what is being used as a medium for perpetuating those crimes, by dealing with one, you tackle the other.
Exactly.
So, but I'm sure that's part of your considerations anyway. All right, moving on to the next question. You may be aware that a new member of the Police and Crime Panel had some views about PCSOs, which I did not accept. And obviously, I had to make my views robustly to him. I wonder if you might be interested, if you might want to say some things about the value that PCSOs add to the force, the impact they have. And also, he wanted to know if there's ever been a survey as to whether or not the public prefer PCSOs or PCs. Personally, I think that would be wrong, because PCSOs play an important role in policing in the same way that other police staff do. This would be like saying, well, do we need detectives in uniform or not in uniform? I mean, everyone has a role to play in policing. But, that was the question that he raised, and I'll just be interested to get your response to that as well.
Yeah, and ultimately, I serve the public to ensure there's an effective operational response from Bedfordshire Police, and I can, categorically say to you, Commissioner, and to the panel member, and I'd happily have a conversation with that individual in due course, that the PCSOs are an integral part of our operational response. And what I would say about them is these are the plus factors. Firstly, it's a different entry route into policing, and not everyone wants to be a police officer, but some people have come in and have become a police community support officer, and have do that role really effectively. And there's a couple of benefits that I see that they offer. One, they tend to move around the organisation less, so they get to know their community better.
Yeah.
Therefore, they know what they're looking for. They submit good intelligence. The nature of their role, because they're not doing all the things that officers do, takes them off the streets for less time. So they tend to be out in communities, more, and being visible, and I can think of a couple of our PCSOs who the community have known for years and hold in super high regard. So it's not an either or. We've got a blended approach, and having that role within our community teams adds really good value. They do great work above and beyond, and many of them actually have gone on to start as a PCSO and have then became highly effective officers. So
yes,
my view is they are an integral part of our community policing model. We still got community policing police officers. We've just got a blend, and the two things work together well.
Yes, yeah. And I just want to reassure any of our PCSOs who are listening to this, or who might have heard that comment, that, for me as Police and Crime Commissioner, I fully support them. The budget that we have in place that invest in community policing has, in a roundabout way, pretty much protected the role of PCSOs, and we've kept that number the same. We haven't cut the number of PCSOs. And there are no plans to cut the number of PCSOs while I am Police and Crime Commissioner in Bedfordshire. And I see the Chief Constable nodding there, so I think we're on the same page. So thanks for that validating comment, Chief. Next question is one about the crime and threats that taxi drivers are facing in Bedfordshire. I'm told by a local taxi driver in Bedford that the police are not attending all cases involving taxi drivers who play an important part in our nighttime economy, as I'm sure you appreciate, especially in getting women and girls home, or anyone home for that matter, when they need that extra support. What reassurance can you give this important tradespeople in our county that when they need the police, they will get a response? And also, will you be happy to have one of your officers attend a meeting with taxi drivers to discuss this issue? My concern is just that, so one of the, an example that one gave to me, Trevor, was that someone came into a taxi, got to the destination, refused to pay. The taxi driver obviously insisted on being paid for the fare, which I think is only fair thing to do. Pardon the pun there. This person not only went on to leave the vehicle, but also proceeded to start shouting a bit racist abuse at the taxi driver. Basically punched them, I believe. Now the taxi driver said that he called the police, and all the police did was to give him a crime reference number or something.
Yeah, so
there was no attendance.
Okay, well, firstly, any of our taxi driver, who watch this when it's published, we do see them as an important part of the community. They do often act as eyes and ears and play, as you say, an important role, particularly in the nighttime economy. I think you mentioned, the taxi drivers in Bedford. I do know that one of our licensing officers met with them only in March.
Okay.
But there's been a request for a further meeting, from what I just heard you say. So our current sergeant that looks after that unit that I would expect to have the engagement with them is John Killick. So I will ask John to instigate a meeting with them. We won't attend every incident in terms of, for example, it might be an accident that the taxi's involved in where there's no one injured. And it might be that a crime has happened, but that's no longer in progress and the person's no longer there. And if it's a night,
sorry to interrupt you, Trevor. So the non-attendance is not because they're a taxi driver, it's just because that's the general rule. If it's a car accident and no one is injured, the police will not attend.
Yeah,
generally speaking.
We generally give advice on to ensure they comply with the law. So we're not going to kind of attend because it's a taxi. We will do what we do with all of our calls. It's threat, harm, and risk. But if those taxi drivers, are in danger, they're being a victim of serious crime, anything like that, I would expect us to be going to their aid. There will be some instances where there's been a real, something has happened, it's no longer happening. I can foresee in a busy nighttime economy where we might have to then deal with that subsequently. So I'm not, but nevertheless, we're supportive of our taxi drivers, and it sounds like a meeting to talk through some of these concerns with the sergeant from the licensing team, who is the interface with that part of our community. It would be a good thing to do. So let's tee that up.
Yeah, that would be really good. Thank you very much for that, Trevor. So we've done the okay. Next one will be around burglary detection rates. That was burglary detection rates. There was a councillor on panel who raised the issue that the police don't attend burglaries in Luton, or in fact, he even said there were not enough police officers in Luton because then the police are never there. And of course, I challenged him to perhaps ask his CBC colleagues who were on the panel what they think about his comments. And I don't think all of them were entirely very impressed by what he said. But nonetheless, I first of all, having seen the data from the Digital Crime Performance Pack today, which is now public, I commend you and your team for being number one in the country for having the biggest fall in residential burglaries out of 43 police forces. And I think this probably aligns with the work of Maze and the work of the offender management team, which I'm sure you can talk about a little bit more. Now, obviously, the commitment that we both had was that a police officer or police staff will attend every residential burglary. Do you want to give an update on how that is going and how that is working in Bedfordshire at the moment?
Yeah, more than happy to talk about good news, because it is a good news story, Commissioner, and make the public of Bedfordshire aware. So you're right. We aren't the top of the table and everything, but I think when someone's home is broken into, that's a pretty serious impact on people, and therefore you'd expect your police force to be prioritising that, and we are and have been. So yeah, we have got a really good detection rate, when you compare us to other forces. But for me, it's not having your home burgled in the first place. So to be number one in reducing burglaries is really pleasing. So just in terms of that, that question, I think you said it was from a councillor. Just to be really clear, we attend all burglaries where someone's home is broken into. There are other types of burglary where we won't always attend.
You want to just clarify that for those who might not know, just simply, if you can.
Yes,
the other types of burglary.
Where there's a shed or another type of premises that's not someone's home, that's not necessarily treated in the same way. It doesn't mean we won't investigate it, but clearly I think the public would be with me on wanting to prioritise when someone's home is broken into. That's not to say when someone's business is broken into and it affects their livelihood, that's not a serious crime, because it is. But this is about this promise we've made to attend all burglaries where your home's broken into, and you know, some people then being left with a feeling of not being safe in their own home, you know. So we will always attend those burglaries of that nature. But actually, we also, not only do we attend, we're a force that has a dedicated burglary squad, which in our force we call Operation Maze. And it's not just investigating who's done it and, you know, solving that burglary. What you tend to find with burglary, along with some other serious acquisitive crime, is that you get someone who that may be their offending, and therefore, you know, they're a burglar and they will burgle, you know, to feed maybe a drugs habit or whatever, you know, is the driver. But that they will do more than one, and therefore, if you find someone that's done a burglary, we have a separate offender management team who look at if someone is what we would describe as a prolific offender, the value in investing time in seeking to get them from, you know, to stop their offending reoccurring is, you know, is really well invested time. And that program, combined with our dedicated response to burglary, has resulted in us having a really, you know, some real great reductions in burglary. So hopefully those listening to this, and in answer to that question, there's some reassurance there.
Yeah, I just while I was saying to your predecessor Gary some time ago that, look, you know, why can't the force offer the same kind of service that it does to residential burglaries to commercial burglaries? And I understand, I mean, the amount of resource and the stretch that Op Maze will then get will be one whereby rather than being 100%, well, maybe close to 100% in one area, you end up being 50% in many other cases. So net overall, you're not actually performing that much better. I would just ask you to perhaps look into how well the force responds to commercial burglaries or thefts, because as someone with a business background myself, I'm sure you'd appreciate that many people, their entire life investment go into their businesses. Their pension is tied into their business. Their family, they've got 2 or 3 members of their family working in that same shop, and then they just have repeat shoplifters coming into their building over and over again. So I know there's some really good work being done about shoplifting as well. I mean, the data shows that. Just something that I would just like you to maybe look into, please.
Well, you know, what I would say is we haven't just had reductions in dwelling burglary or burglary of people's homes. We've had reduction in all burglaries. So that's going in the right direction. You know, and what I would say is where I want to, and you know, expand. You know, I've said to you, Commissioner, I want to be tough on crime. The force is growing to its biggest strength ever. It's not as simple as you bring people in and it changes your operational effect overnight, but over time it will. And so we want, you know, all of these things to be going in the right direction. But there's other crime types I would single out for this kind of focus. So if I talk about, you know, personal robbery, someone being robbed in the street, for me, is right up there in terms of the response we want and the dedicated resources having a focus on it. So that's the kind of balance that I've got, because I want us to be, you know, in the same place for robbery as we are for burglary, and we're going in that direction. And I want to, you know.
So does Maze deal with personal robberies as well?
Yes, at the moment it deals with burglary, but we're looking potentially to grow that team and expand its.
And do you have the resources for that, or is that something? Is this your pitch for budget for next year, Trevor?
No, well, I'll always have a compelling pitch for budget, but you know, this is, as we've got a lot, as you know, we have a lot of people being trained to be officers right now. But when, you know, this is the right time to be thinking when those people become at the point where they're posted into their final postings and they're, you know, independent officers in their own right. How do we want to kind of position those the footprint of the forces? And so, you know, I do have an ambition that will be, you know, when we are already improving. So our CID take all robberies, you know, and investigate them. But I would, you know, really kind of look at that crime and other ones where we start to really kind of specialize our response. And that's what, you know, you'd expect us to be doing as a high performing force.
And just lastly on this particular topic and Maze and IOM, the Integrated Offender Management Team, I know that they do a huge amount of work, especially with the most persistent offenders. And my view is if they were even 10%, if they were performing 10 or 20% below where they are performing now, the crime figures in Bedfordshire will go through the roof. You know, because the people that they're dealing with, they are probably responsible for a bulk of some of the, well, bulk crimes that we have in the county. What do you think how well are the IOM working together with Maze, number one, and secondly, will it be possible to have some case studies? You know how much I love case studies, right? Just because it just tells a story about what actually is happening. Because I can get data all I can get, but the numbers don't always tell me about the lives being transformed. Because I know that the IOM, they do a lot of the intensive scheme as well. You don't have to, if you don't have the answer for that right now, that's fine. But you know, it would just be good to get some of these, you know, turnaround stories of some of the offenders that we've worked with. I've heard about some of them, but I think the public will be quite pleased to see the remarkable turnaround that they've been able to achieve for people who really were just a nightmare to our local communities with burglaries.
Yeah, and we can definitely get a case study to obviously in an anonymised way to talk about
Yes,
someone who been in and out of custody a large part of their life, has done loads of offending, for them to stop for permanently or significant period. Often you find there's a regression period, particularly if there's an addiction involved. But actually you kind of accept that as a part of the challenge of that work, and nevertheless, someone stops offending for 6 months, that can be quite significant.
That's significant. And, and this is the part of policing that the public don't really get to see. And I think it's good for them to see. We can talk about the numbers going down, the 58%, but I think if we can actually talk about John Smith, I hope there's no one listening to this called John Smith, who was that person that was constantly being arrested for burglary, had addiction problems, family breakdown issues, mental health, no job, all that kind of stuff. And then to have your team and your staff members work with them intensively over a period of time, to the point where rather than going to the court 7 or 8 times a year, they've been once. That is a massive saving to taxpayers, and obviously of police time that they can actually use in other areas as well. So it'll be good to hear this kind of stories.
Yeah, and and what I'd also say is, for anyone who's really interested in how the force is doing on that, read the HMIC report onto our grading of outstanding for managing offenders, because that's
I'm sure everybody would love reading the. I'm sure everybody would love reading the entire document, or just go to that part alone, and that's fine. Next question. This is something that we've spoken about before, but I can see how frustrating it is for the public, and it's probably something that I just need to cite you on. A number of cases, people have gone through the 101 and they've opted for a callback, or they've reported a crime and they were told that the crime was recorded and that somebody was going to get back in touch with them. No callback ever happened.
Yeah.
I don't know what the time frame is for the callback to happen, if at all, and how this is being tracked and monitored by yourself.
Yeah. So what we did, Commissioner, this is, I've been talking about some areas that we're doing really well at. Our control room is in the area of focus for me, because it's one where, we need to improve on. And it's not, as I'll start by always saying, the staff in there are doing an amazing job.
Yeah.
But the demand is excessive for the numbers of people in there. So, we need to grow the workforce, which we are doing. And again, we've got quite a lot of people in training and more people joining next month in that environment.
Yes.
But equally,
is the cohort as big as the one you had in February? Because I mean, that was quite massive. That number, that was about 19 or 20 there.
Yeah, I hope so. Sometimes we have to wait till last minute vetting, medical.
Yeah, with the vetting, yes, yeah. Okay.
However, I'm hopeful of that. But the other bit is, so there was a technical issue identified, because we had this looked into, and it transpired that there was a limit on the number of people who were in a callback queue, and therefore you couldn't have I don't know the technical description of it, but it wouldn't increase its capacity to hold the total number at any one time that we needed it to. That's now been rectified. So we've increased the volume that can go into a queue. So we should not have people experiencing that. But while we're on the topic, I guess there's a few things to say, because it is an area of real focus for the force at the moment. You know, we've got a few critical factors in terms of the pressure of managing the demand, which there's a real focus on. And it's going to take some time, but you know, the leadership focuses on it. So our crime recording, you know, our crime bureau now is actually up to strength in a way that it hadn't been for some time. So at the moment, people tend to be on a kind of, again, a kind of, you know, a voice recording, you know, piece of software where they leave details and they get called back. I think we're at the close to the numbers now where we can actually be taking, for a lot of the time, those calls straight into the crime bureau rather than our control room. About 10% of our demand is people reporting crimes, and if they're going straight to the individuals that actually, you know, deal with that, that is going to be better for the public and better for the staff in the control room. Who, so there's that. We're on the cusp of that at the moment. So you know, I'm really hopeful about that, along with other things we're doing. So, you know, here and now I know that our response times in that aspect of the organisation aren't what we want them to be, but we're working really hard to improve that, and I'm confident that you know, we will see that to be an improving picture.
Okay. Right. So it's a quick one about firearms license delays. I've had a couple of emails from some of our farmers, mostly in the rural areas, about the delays in the firearms. Do you want to give any updates on what has been done to try and deal with these delays?
Yeah, I mean, the simple fact is we, you know, post the inquest into the tragic deaths in Devon and Cornwall, they're related to, you know, had a really relevant firearms licensing issue. Lots of guidance came out as a result of learning from that. And, you know, firstly, we as a force, and along with our two neighbouring forces that we collaborate in firearms licensing with, you know, instantly responded to those recommendations. So we can
quite rightly as well.
Absolutely, and there's been investment in that area. That's very much been you know, really increased the investigative mindset about granting firearms applications, and so there's not just been a you know, a far more sort of enhanced approach to issuing firearms licenses, but actually there's been a retrospective reviews of ones we've granted and you know, appeals. That sort of review process, which has made really good progress, meant that for a period of time we had to suspend our you know, granting new licenses while we made sure we didn't have anyone with a license that shouldn't have one. So that's meant that new applications have been paused until the 17th of July. I appreciate that's a month's wait from where we are now, but that will reopen on the 17th of July, by which time we anticipate we would have cleared our backlog, and then we can focus on the new applications. Because it's been important that we know we haven't issued someone with a firearms license that necessarily risks would say they shouldn't have one.
So this is very much a risk mitigating decision.
Yeah.
But when do you think, I mean, are you able to put any kind of time frame on this? If you can't, then that's fine, but it would just be worthwhile knowing.
You know, I think, you know, we are looking, you know, we haven't now got delays in our renewal of applications, so people are getting their renewals done.
Okay.
You know, we have got some, you know, where we've taken people's guns away from them, and that process where we are reviewing whether we need to revoke a license. There are some delays there, but essentially the delays are in a situation where we have the guns, so we've reduced the risk to the public. But I also appreciate that any delay in issuing the license of new applications can impact on, you know, dealers of firearms, who's their business, and equally, you know, farmers, etc., who require on them for what they do. So But on the 17th of July, I anticipate we will be back to processing things at a service level, that in terms of new applications that we will meet the need of the public.
Okay, all right. The other question that I've been sent is based on my several discussions with councillors and especially town and parish councils that I've been to. I'm kind of concerned that still, despite all the investment that's gone into community, we still have councillors and town clerks who don't know who the inspector is or who the sergeant is. I just wonder if it is possible, if it would not be possible for some kind of a email to go to the councillors, or to get to know who their officers are.
Festus, on this one, because there's many councillors across the county.
Yeah,
I've made sure, that police.uk for our community teams is now up to date. They just need to go on police.uk and they will be able to find their people. So that's the message I would ask that you encourage them to do.
I do that. I tell them to just put their postcode in. You can find out who your sergeant and inspector is. It doesn't have contact details on there though. Some of them have got pictures and names, but the contact details on the website is HQ address and telephone number. Now, I'm not saying that all the email address of police officers should be made available, but I would have thought at least there should be a point of contact at those levels. It could just be the email address of a sergeant. Now, I know, just to be balanced, that there are some town councils that have an absolutely fabulous relationship, even with the PCs and the PCSOs, emphasis added, even with the PCSOs as well. They have the telephone numbers, they message each other, they update each other, so they have a great relationship. This is not the same everywhere. I mean, so someone like Rachel, for example, everybody knows who Rachel is in Leighton Buzzard. Her daughter as well in Flitwick Ampthill, she's known. A couple of the officers in Northeast Best, the same thing around the Risley area. Good relationship between the inspector and the councillors or the town clerk in particular, but that is not duplicated everywhere else. So I think at least the inspectors and the sergeants should have a better relationship, at least with the leadership of those constituent local authorities, in my opinion. But I get what you're saying about the police.uk, and if more can be done at the force level, just remind everyone, if you want to know who your teams are, go online, it's all there, their names are there. Some of them even have their pictures on there. I've seen it.
Yeah, they are. And it's a fair point. Everyone should know, who the leadership is of the few teams. And I think where the community teams, the preference is that each, and one thing we will promote is each area has a community team inbox for that area, and therefore that monitors every day. Whereas if you go to an individual officer and they're suddenly on rest days or annual leave,
that's right. Yes,
you're left
fair
hanging.
point.
So our preference is go to the inbox, because someone will pick that up that day, because they kind of work out a way of who's monitoring the inbox, and then they'll make sure that someone who's working will get that.
That's
it's
correct.
critical
So
response.
is that something that you're working on now, or
so we
you expect to be in place?
So let's try and promote that, and I'll make sure you have it as well.
Excellent.
I know that you are very good at promoting stuff on your social media channels.
Well, I'll just remind you about it as well, in case if I okay. Next one is around update on sale of Greyfriars.
Yeah. So I am reliably informed, having been here since 2019, that Greyfriars is going on the market this week. I've not personally checked today if it is, but I will. If there's any change to that, Commissioner, I'll let you know. But it's on the market imminently, hopefully this week.
I remember. I think Phil Wells sent me it's on Rightmove. That's right. It's on Rightmove. It's on Rightmove. I think it went on Rightmove yesterday. I think it is, though. When he sent, I can't remember when he sent me the WhatsApp. Yeah, so it is on. It is. So let's sell it once and for all. It's been on the market for about 6 or 7 years. it's costing local taxpayers about £100,000 a year just to keep shut. And I think you'll be quite happy to spend that extra money somewhere else within the force.
Yeah.
Unless you don't want it, right? Then I'll have it.
No, the sale of that building is further planned into our financial plans. That's one careful owner, and it's on the market now. It's in a great prime location. So
one careful owner like a car. Yeah, I like that. That's a good one. Also, any update on the work on the NPCC race action plan?
yeah, so I guess what people would have seen in the media is, there's a new version of the plan coming out, and that is true. All I would say to our communities across the county, and in particular our Black communities, because this plan focuses on improving policing for Black people, and rightly so. That our version of the plan is well underway, and we are there's lots to be done, but in terms of our understanding of our data, in terms of when we use our powers, in terms of how victims, the outcomes, any disparity in those, we have a much better understanding of that than ever before, so we can look at disparity and address that. But importantly, the engagement with communities is really going to step up, and there's going to be some planned engagement events, so we can really talk about these issues with our communities. And equally, there's lots that we are doing in terms of culture being a real priority of mine in the force, so that people from underrepresented communities who join Bedfordshire Police, are welcomed and supported to thrive and get a real sense of belonging in an inclusive culture. So, yeah.
So we're going ahead at speed, well, not at speed, at pace, and things are moving in the right direction in your view.
Yeah, this hasn't been passed to a diversity manager to own. There is this, the race action plan has 4 central pillars to it.
Yep.
We have a senior leader responsible for each, and I have an update at my executive board on the progress of those every month, because it's really important to me that we really make progress in an area that policing hasn't made enough progress on over many years.
So each pillar reports to you regularly?
Yeah, so each pillar reports into our force executive board. That's held every month, and we look at a pillar in rotation.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Okay. Next question is around the policing of Luton Town Football Club that are now in the big leagues, where they belong. And I want to congratulate Luton Town Football Club for an amazing achievement in getting to the Premiership and being promoted. It was quite a nerve-wracking watch, but I'm glad it worked out great for the players and the team and the staff there, and I really want to congratulate them. Now, obviously, thinking ahead about what this will mean in terms of footfall into the town when the team is playing, how do you expect this to happen? How do you expect this to be policed? And what kind of demands are you expecting to have, and how is it going to be paid for?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I'd like to firstly share my congratulations to the team. Yes. It's a great achievement. It's brilliant. Yes. For the town. And I guess it's really important to know and people do know, the club do a lot of good for the community. Yes. They're involved, as we are, in every kind of key community event. The club seem to be there. And if this is good for the club and it's good for our communities, then as far as I'm concerned, it's really great for the county, and it's that's important to Bedfordshire Police. So we are really support the club on their efforts. Obviously, the Kenilworth Road is in a interesting, as a ground. It's positioned right in the heart of the town. And the club's working hard now, I know, to make changes that they need to make to be ready for the season, or early in the start of the season. It will bring a slightly different policing challenge, but in terms of we work really effectively with the club around safety. In the league they were in this year, there were what we would consider to be higher risk matches. And we work really closely with the club to police them. And the Premier League is really professional at that kind of collective risk management with the police on a club level. So we will continue our good relationship with the club, and there are arrangements, as for cost recovery in relation to officers we need to put into the ground. And how that relationship exists with stewards, officers in the ground, and the policing footprint on the outside. And in the past, that we've had significant policing presence for some games, including mounted officers. And we will, if we have those games that classed at that risk, we'll do that in the future. So I don't really have any concerns. It will be additional demand, but I think the good that it brings to the town outweighs any concern for us.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad that you've got that covered, and I can't wait for the opening game of the season. It will be an amazing experience. It'll be great. So I've got two more questions. It's around the recruitment of special constables, and I've had one of the councillors in the county talk about the use of specials on dealing with speeding. You're probably not aware of this, that we did a road safety survey, which I think ended this week. I'm waiting for the full date to come to me, but I'm informed that it had probably the largest amount of responses so far we've had to a survey. And speeding, which is quite linked to the first question, the second question I asked you around the use of motorbikes on our streets, was up there. What the councillor was suggesting is that in some one or two forces, he's aware of where there are speed vans in place, and specials tend to mount these. And I've received some very insightful information from the PCC there of the impact that they've been able to achieve in terms of speed penalties, in terms of fines, in terms of other positive policing impact that they've been able to have in doing this, and a good amount of hours they've put into this as well. I'm just like to know what your thoughts are. So first of all, update on the recruitment of special constable into neighborhood policing, and also how these can be used, for example, in dealing with speeding.
Okay, so while you've been speaking on the question, I've just brought up our latest special kind of where we have our individuals. So what I would start with is, special constables are an integral part of our policing model. We were both at our awards night the other night, where we gave one individual, an award for more than 30 years as a special constable.
Yes.
So they make it really, a great contribution. Our model does put special constables across a number of areas, and so as we sit here now, we've got 77 special constables in our north community hubs. We've got 10 allocated there. We've got 13 in the south, 6 who work at the airport, and 24 on response in the north, and 14 on response in the south. We got 3 on roads policing, so they're actually driving traffic cars and directly tackling some of the issues you've just described. And we've actually got people in other areas, so protecting vulnerable people, missing, citizens in policing. One's a dog handler, and we've got 3 in kind of.
You've got a special that's a dog handler?
One works on dogs.
Wow.
Yeah. So and 3 at HQ in specialist functions. Obviously, you referred to specific operations around speeding, whether that's a van or sometimes a handheld, device. I think as an equal, deterrent. Clearly, we target our enforcement van in areas where, generally, where there's risk of serious injury or death on the roads, and we have a number of those places where you would expect us to be focusing those assets. That I'm really amenable to the special constables on the community team doing some of this work that you just described, and that's so I am supportive of us doing more of that, and we will look at how our special constables, and in fact this is reflective of a conversation I had with the new mayor of Bedford the other day, show a visible presence in some of our smaller towns and villages in relation to speeding challenges that residents are complaining about. So
Right.
yeah, hopefully
So,
that answers that.
so that helps, and thanks for the breakdown of where the specials are deployed as well. I'm still surprised that we're pleasantly surprised that is that you've got all these specialism areas that you've got specials now working in. That's really, really good. It's really good. And the last question is around the use of the much loved acronyms in in policing, of which there's an entire dictionary, I'm sure, full of acronyms, which people sometimes I'm sure get confused by. Is there any way that the force can perhaps have a directory? I know they've got one in the Met. I guess people can probably use that one, but then I find that different forces also have different acronyms that they use for different things as well.
So I guess my first response is, I think acronyms are supposed to be for an internal audience, and I know the language spills out sometimes, but
Yeah.
in any communications that we do, I don't expect us to be using acronyms that won't mean anything to the public. You know, we did a bit earlier around different entry routes, which is why I tried to say, look, there's 3 ways.
Yeah.
You know, get a degree over 3 years and join us and be paid to do it, or, you know, or come in with a degree or without one, rather than PCDA, DHEP, you know, and all the things that go.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I think, Commissioner, my commitment is I really want our workforce, and I encourage our comms department to be really plain English explaining what we do.
Good.
I think if your office wants to create a directory, you know, we could probably do that quickly, in that they would just need to say, what does this mean? And we tell you the answer.
That's a great way to push it back. That's I saw what you did there. No, look, I guess for me, as long as your team are on top of the plain speaking in press releases, that I think will probably address that issue.
Yeah.
And if that is indeed the case, then long may that continue. Just like someone put that question in, and they might have seen a press release from somewhere else. I don't know. Maybe it's from the force or from I don't know. But obviously they've asked the question, and I'm passing that on. So that's really good. Well, look, to just finish off, Chief, I'm sure you want to join me again in wishing Sean Basra a happy retirement. Formerly ACC, Sean well, still ACC at the moment because he's not. His last is officially in October. At his last day in the force yesterday, after what 30 years as a police officer.
31 years. He's to be a Bedfordshire officer through and through, from joining all the way through to assistant chief constable, and to have his work ethic and, you know, how he's set standards and supported our workforce and done amazing service for the public. You know, he's liked and respected across the county, and it was a significant day to say goodbye to him, or, you know, yesterday, in terms of the last day we'll actually see him in a uniform in Bedfordshire Police.
Yes.
But he will stay close, and I'm sure we'll see him pop up in policing in a different way, one way or another, and continue his public service at some point. So, but he
intend to have served in every rank as well. I think you said he did. He said he served in every rank.
Every rank up to assistant chief constable. Yeah.
That is very impressive. So we're gonna miss him. Great man, and we can only just wish him the very best in whatever he chooses to do next. Now he's got his first day off in 31 years today. Bless him. Yours is going to come eventually, so I'm sure you're not going to think. You're not thinking about that now, are you?
No, we've just started, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, you keep thinking that. Well, Trevor, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it as always, and thanks for your answers to the questions. And I'm sure those who send those in, they'll be watching this video at some point to get their answers to their questions.
Yeah, more than happy to do that. Okay, take care.
Thank you, Chief. Bye-bye.
Bye.